everybody. Welcome to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson, and I'm here with my classmate, my friend, my travel buddy. Yeah. And we're alumni all together, everything,
Yes.
all that stuff.
MBA program.
Yep. Robert Muhammad, a great guy who we're going to learn more about him, and I cannot wait for you to be enlightened. We're going to be onward by all means by the end of this. All right, so Robert, you've seen the show before, and you know what's going on. First question is where are you from, and how long have you been in Winston?
Born in Johnson City, Tennessee.
Volunteer.
Volunteer state.
Yeah.
Moved to Charlotte when I was about 6.5 months old. My grandparents raised me.
Okay.
Actually adopted me.
Okay.
So interestingly enough, after the adoption, of course, my dad and his siblings are legally, or were legally, my brothers and sisters, which is a whole different dynamic. I know.
You said Tennessee, not West Virginia.
I said Tennessee, the mountains of Tennessee.
Right.
So, been in Winston-Salem since 2011. I arrived here in order to work at Winston-Salem State University as Director of Financial Aid. And in 2020, during COVID, for whatever reason, I accepted an offer to go to Howard University to become the Executive Director of Financial Aid. I've been there for the last almost 3 years.
And I want to get on that. I mean, that's what. All right, so you're married.
Yes.
Right? Beautiful wife. She's awesome.
Yes, 18 years.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting her. So with our background, so I did not know that you'd only been at Winston-Salem State a year when I met you.
Yes. Yes.
That's amazing. So how did we get there? So where did you go to? Obviously, you went to what high school in Charlotte?
East Mecklenburg.
East Meck, okay. And then where'd you go to college?
I started out at Central Piedmont Community College, trying to find myself.
Right.
So that's where I did some acting. I was able to do some modeling.
Right.
I
swear we should put some of those pictures up. We should. Stabler, remind me. We've got them.
I have a few.
Yeah, they're on his Facebook page. We'll pull them.
Got a chance to be a bit more active. I was during the time of the Dr. King controversy as far as becoming a national holiday. So I did some writing for them.
Right.
Took some time off, worked at IBM for about a year and a half.
Right.
And then landed at UNC Charlotte for my undergraduate degree in sociology.
I'll forgive you for that because, App State and 49ers, we don't really get along.
I know.
Right. And so then you land at Winston-Salem State.
Yes.
Okay.
After having been in financial aid or higher ed, I was a trade actually from financial aid, from admissions to financial aid because I had IT experience.
Right.
So in that space at Central Piedmont, working there after having gone to school there, we did veteran affairs for about 5 years. Did the veteran affairs, educational benefits, of course. Right. Did verification, which is a part of federal regulations. Did work study program for the university, for the college, and then eventually landed in the TRIO program, which is a college readiness program for Central Piedmont. I still worked in financial aid the whole time.
A great program. They have it at App. It's like called the Watauga College, where and then I'm a firm believer in Forsyth Tech. Here in Winston, going there, getting your feet, figuring stuff out. I mean, my daughter's 9 now. I'm already trying to say, well, why don't you look at HVAC, plumbing, or electrical? Just get in there and But so we are going to talk about 2 Supreme Court decisions because I think they're very important to what you do.
Yes.
I want to touch on that. I want to ask a couple more questions. So you live in the 27103 area code, Stratford Road area.
Yes.
And by the way, just so everyone knows, he takes the cake. Future guest, you need to hear this. Coffee and donuts from Krispy Kreme were here for Stabler and I as a welcome to his home. So what's going on? You're episode 80, so there's 79 people before you that didn't do this, okay? I mean, I've even been in bars. Well, no, some of the bars gave us a little alcohol, but I mean, nothing like this, so thank you.
You're very welcome.
So what is your favorite place, you and Kristen, what's your favorite place to eat?
Oh my gosh, Nawab, Indian.
Nawab?
That's for me.
Good stuff, isn't it?
Yes. Now see, Kristen, she is more of a meat and potatoes person.
Right.
So she will find some things very non-spicy.
Right.
She likes Cagney's. She
Cagney's,
likes, Arthur's.
You been to West Town out in Louisville?
Have not.
She's a meet and three person where
Yes.
they go in, they got to meet
Yes.
Duke's Restaurant on Country Club. I'm telling you all the places you need to.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
the
Thank
old
you.
meet and three.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I would say is Nawab, great place. There's a couple new ones that I've learned about too with regard to Indian food. My wife and I love Indian food, but we have the coolest thing in the world. Her college roommate married a gentleman from India, and he has now cooked for us twice.
Oh, nice.
So I
Very
know what
nice.
you want me to say next. So next time he's over, you
Yes,
need to come
please,
over, Stabler, you too.
please.
But I mean, it's like I swear I think he spends $1,000 on groceries. I mean, it is like a meal fit for like 12 people.
And it's some of the best food
It's
and,
awesome.
and healthiest food you
Yeah,
can find.
yeah.
Definitely.
All right. So when you're not here
Yes.
working, because I know you're on a lot of Zoom calls. Obviously,
Yes.
you're in DC, but what do you like to do for fun in Winston?
Oh my gosh. Oh goodness.
I'm gonna cue you on one of them.
I still like doing the beer crawl.
I was gonna say City Beverage
Yes,
is one of your favorite
City
places.
Beverage.
Spencer does such a great
Yes.
job there.
I still like that.
Yeah, and you meet some friends there every so often.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get a chance to do the Sofa Bar.
Okay. Nice.
Get a chance to do the Whiskey Tavern downtown. I forget
Right.
what they call it now.
Right.
But do whiskeys.
Right.
Kristen and I are just now getting into wine. So
Okay.
one of our goals is to do more wineries.
Great.
I want to do Childress.
Yep.
And
Let me know when you want to go to Dynamis. That's the one.
Dynamis?
Yes.
Okay. Where's it located?
It's located in Elkin, and we have an episode of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but
Okay.
we'll call up there because our friend is there, and you. I mean, it's amazing. You're dropped in the middle of Napa, but I mean, we got great wineries around.
Yes,
us.
we do. We do.
So.
And a lot of people don't realize that, prior to Prohibition, we in North Carolina had one of the strongest areas for whiskey.
Well, Zeb.
Yeah.
Out at Old Nick Williams.
Yes.
Farm and Distillery. Yeah.
So we didn't recognize that post the Prohibition, you then had others come in. But back in the day you had rye whiskey, you had the different types of whiskey that came from the Scotch Irish.
Right.
Of course this is area, at least
Right.
my area going back in Tennessee.
Right.
But just being able now to see it reemerge, whether it's wine or whether it's gin or whether or whether it's whiskey, it's just so cool. And this is probably, I don't think I would have thought about moving to Winston-Salem had I not gotten the job. And I actually thought when I first came here, I'd spend more time in Greensboro than in Winston.
Or Charlotte, because
Yes.
that's home.
But
Yeah.
Winston has so many cool places. So many.
Thank
cool
you for
places.
saying that. That's one of the main reasons we do Camel City Chat is to
Yes.
share stuff out with people.
It,
All right, so we got to talk about a couple hobbies first so people get to know Robert Muhammad.
sure.
All right, so you are a fan of comics.
Very much so.
And Marvel is your favorite, correct?
Marvel is the favorite after DC. DC started.
DC is still your favorite.
DC
Okay.
started it, and then Marvel came along, and so now I'm probably 60% Marvel, 40% DC.
Who's your favorite character?
Oh my gosh.
Is Wolverine? Or Loki?
I have to give you more than one. My
Okay.
favorite Golden Age hero is Spy Smasher.
Okay.
From 1940-41, Fawcett, the same company, gave us Captain Marvel,
Okay.
now known as Shazam.
Right.
Silver Age, I have to go with Spider-Man.
Okay.
And then modern age, I have to go with Green Lantern and or Batman.
Okay. So I would say Spider-Man's always been one of my favorites. I like Ghost Rider.
Yes.
And I got a buddy of mine his Facebook name is Moon Knight, and he owns Marvel Real Estate on the Outer Banks. So, I remember as a kid going to Marvel, and Marvel's offices was about the size of this floor in your house. And, they gave me, I've got the big poster that's all their characters, and my parents had met Stan Lee because, we were in that industry.
Yes.
And so I remember all that stuff. I have all my comics from back in the 70s. Yeah, well, you need to come over for that too, besides the bourbon collection.
Yes.
And it's, I just remember where they were, and to see where Marvel is now is just
phenomenal.
incredible.
It is.
And they continue to do good things. And the small, just the latest thing of now we're going to have Harry Potter in a television series and stuff like that they're doing with all
Yes.
these different things.
Yes.
I love the fact that we have UNCSA in our town because so
yes,
many people
definitely.
are tied back to it.
Yes.
So, well, all right. So, when did you find Islam? because you were you're a former member of the church and also were a minister for the Nation of Islam. I mean, you were on the front cover of the Charlotte paper preaching.
I was.
Yeah, so tell me about that.
Sure. So I grew up Baptist, Pleasant Hill Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. Every Sunday, I would stand next to the preacher and offer the right hand of fellowship. They thought I would be the next preacher of the church. I was doing Sunday school lessons, for lack of a better term, at the age of 6. My grandmother read the Bible to me. I started reading at the age of 4. So I was very much into the spirituality and the religious aspect of church. Remained that way with the church until probably the age of 13 or 14. And that would be about the time we started seeing more national gang activity, more drug activity, and some implosion of the neighborhoods. And I didn't think the church was being as proactive as it could be.
It was turning, wasn't it? It wasn't looking at it. It was turning aside to it. Yeah.
So I stepped back and didn't really do anything with religion until I was maybe 18 or 19, maybe 20. And I read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Right.
And that book changed my life.
Right.
And silly me, not recognizing at that time that the whole thing with Malcolm supposedly being murdered by the Nation of Islam, and there was beef with the Nation of Islam and Malcolm. Didn't know that there was a Louis Farrakhan. I just knew that I wanted some Malcolm X tapes, some Malcolm X information. So I went to a local mosque in Charlotte looking for Malcolm information. And I think I was looked at kind of sideways when I went in. But I liked what I heard about the community involvement and about doing for self. I wasn't so sold initially on the religious aspect of it.
The thing that I've seen through all that is a constant theme in your life.
Yes.
And that is helping others. And specifically for you, you want to help young men of color. You want to make sure that they know. And this is something that you and I have talked about many times. And this is a great, we have a nothing is wrong, nothing can be said wrong relationship. Just the other night, you're like, John, you know me. I'm like, go ahead, say it. And you told me something, and I'm like, well, you can say it that way. I'm not going to say it that way. But it's interesting to me how you can turn your back on your faith. You can turn your back on your people as long as you are helping someone.
Yes.
And I don't mean that as a negative turn your back, but if you're hearing here, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, you're saying, hey, wait a minute, I have the opportunity to save a young man's life or a young lady's life.
And for me, with my time in the Nation, I never thought I'd become a minister, although the minister of the mosque at that time, Mosque number 36 in Charlotte, said he saw in me the capacity to do it. Meeting Louis Farrakhan at a relatively young age, saying I reminded him of himself, which I thought was very cool when he was young.
And he's said very many kind things about you, and you've told me that over the years.
Yes.
Yeah, he thinks a lot of you.
Yes.
And you were a loss when you left.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. He was very kind and gracious the times that I met him. And even when I left, I wrote him a letter. And he wrote me a letter back. Well, actually, he tried to call me.
Right.
But he was out of the country, and then he developed a second round, a third round of colon cancer.
Right.
So I decided to step away and not to bother him.
Yeah.
So when I walked away or stepped away, I'm a person, I know politics are part of what we do. I just don't care for politics. I think sometimes politics get in the way of the work.
Hold this, because we're going to take a break, and you're going right where I was going to ask you. So hold this, because I know Stabler's ready for a break. We're going to take a break. Stabler, you'll put something in there, because we've got some really good, funny footage, and we'll do the modeling pictures. We'll put a couple of modeling pictures up there. We'll be right back with more Camel Seat Chat. Welcome back to Camel Seat Chat. I'm John McPherson. I'm here with Robert Muhammad. Robert and I graduated when did you graduate? In December of 2014?
I did the same year you did, because I actually started a year before you,
Right.
but I then joined your cohort because I had to catch up.
So yeah, all right. So we went to Winston-Salem State together. We'll tell stories about that at some point. But so before we went to break, you were talking about the politics of things, and of course, you know, I'm running for an office in the Realtors right now, and politics is incredible in any organization.
Yes, it is.
The question I ask you, and you can expound on that along with the politics of things,
Sure.
are, you know the Bible,
Yes.
you know the Quran.
Yes.
And then have you done any of the other books of any other religions? Because I find you to be one of the most well-versed, well-read people. We're talking about the Dalai Lama and inner peace and things like that. How does that tie into the politics of things, and how does that
Sure.
tie into the discussions?
So I found oftentimes, and sometimes with my work in the Nation of Islam, when I wanted to expand the work, and I'll give an example. This photo here is of me hosting Kwanzaa, the Mosque number 36 hosting Kwanzaa in Charlotte.
Right.
We had not opened our doors to a public event to host something like Kwanzaa or anything cultural since the 1970s. This is 1995, 96. And the politics of me having that done, being invited to do it by the city of Charlotte, and having so many people be against it because of the regalia I have, or the garb I have on, they thought I was trying to be more than what I was as a minister. I was trying to be Farrakhan.
Right.
But just as importantly, some people were not trying to tie back the importance of Afrocentricity. And more importantly for me, inclusivity. Because the way I look at it, when I considered myself a Muslim, a minister, was I'm not just someone who reads from a Bible, reads from a Quran, or lectures. I am an ambassador.
Right.
So working with different groups, even have the opportunity to meet with Rabbi Murray Isring from I think it's Temple Bethel in Charlotte, and being able to have conversations where we don't agree on everything, but I'm not there to try to change his faith. He wasn't trying to change my faith. We were trying to make a better community.
You still have the same job. You just have different bosses.
Yes.
And in that, it's like there's a wonderful program to working on homelessness here. And I mean, all of the ministers of each of, the rabbi down at our church at Augsburg, et cetera, all that kind of stuff, centenary, they all get together to work towards the common goal. And what we'll do is when we go to the next break, Stabler will zoom in here and get these pictures, because this is actually you preaching at some event.
That's actually me. We had a rash of police shootings of unarmed motorists or citizens.
Right.
And that was me speaking on the death of Carolyn Sue Boddicker, who was killed in a hail of 19 bullets. 12 hit her. Ironically enough, she was a passenger. No bullets hit the driver, who was a white male. It hit the black female. And she was trying to help him out. Yeah. So what I was trying to do in this photograph, and even before, was trying to build synergy for a task force. So whenever we had that type of tragedy in the community, we had the people who could talk forensics. We had the people who could talk the legalities. We had the people who could be spokespersons for the family, versus a family sometimes operating on the energy of emotion, or having people who come in like vultures who only see it as an opportunity to get themselves to shine. So I was really wanting to do like this cadre of folks who could actually work with families to establish a better relationship with the community and with the police. Now, what we did out of this, we actually created the Police Community Review Board. Patrick Cannon, the former mayor of Charlotte, and I worked together. Some other folks. We had a group called Citizens for Justice. And so we worked to get video cameras in cruisers back in the 90s, before it was done in many of them, all that. And even trying to get the information out to the community, the broader community. I mean, I talked to the Amsterdam News, which is a black weekly, I believe, out of Baltimore. I talked to the Village Voice. I talked to other newspapers, and they were saying that 8, 9, or 10 deaths in as many years by police wasn't newsworthy. I'm thinking, but we are demonstrating that there seems to be something wrong with how we approach the stopping of drivers.
And look at it now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you were way ahead of it.
We were. But that's where that photo came from.
Okay. That's interesting, because, now we have, in the last couple weeks, we've had both the police chief and the sheriff come out talking about the deaths in Winston-Salem with regards to people of color getting shot, and it's just why can't we just take a breather and not escalate to this? I mean, you're at a stoplight and somebody's cutting in front of you now, and I just don't get it.
Part of it, I honestly believe, is, and this is a relatively new term, or new thought process, I think. It's almost like a PTSD. It's a holdover from all the things that chattel slavery and Jim Crow helped to create in the community. One thing one of my friends told me a long time ago, and I swear by it, you get these people who walk in front of you at a grocery store at their own leisure, and meaning you're driving slow and they're just going to take their time. And my friend said, Robert, the reason they do that is because they control that moment. And so some people just don't understand the moments they control. They don't have the wherewithal sometimes to control their anger, their temper, the circumstances. And I don't think it helps when you have a music industry for the last 40 years of hip-hop, or 35 years of hip-hop, is going to be 50 years old. Purveying this, whether it's misogyny, whether it's violence. I mean, and I'm a firm believer, if you put that stuff in your ear enough, and you hear it over and over and over and over again, whether it's the N-word this, the N-word that, the B-word that, the B-word
video
whatever,
games,
the videos,
all that stuff.
I think all, but even with the video games, it's interesting. We said the same thing about Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
We said the same thing about Ozzy Osbourne.
Right.
So what is different for a culture that is very similar in the intake,
right,
but the results are different? And we have to have those kind of conversations and be honest about it. And that's something else I found in my time working in the community. There were so many people who just did not take the opportunity to be honest about where we were.
Right.
Whether it's the number of deaths, whether it's the number of shootings, all these things have to be talked about. And we in the community should have a vested interest. But it seems as though, for whatever reason, sometimes our interest is very personal. I call some of our talking heads limelight junkies because they love to be seen on television. They love to be out there rah-rah, and they love to talk about the aspects and the challenges of the African American community. But their solutions oftentimes are very race-based. And I could spend my time pointing at anyone of another color and say, well, it's your fault. But at some point, if I really think that, should I not then change how I operate? And being a biracial male, that's the other thing I didn't point out.
Right. Wow.
Being a biracial male, mom is Caucasian, dad is African American. My dad never understood why I joined the Nation of Islam, by the way.
Right.
But being in that space, I would hope I could have a different type of conversation and not just be seen as the black guy but the person who may want to just look at things differently and have some real conversations and do some real things about trying to change the community.
See, that's the thing that I love about you. I mean, we kid around, but I haven't seen you in probably 6 months or 8 months or whatever, but you and I can pick up and sit down and just talk about every problem in the world. You are such a thinker. You're a caring person. Everything you do has a purpose. I mean, your hair. How long ago did you start doing your hair? I mean, you're like, you know what? I'm going to go back to my natural.
Yep.
And the reason why is because that's who I am, and I need to, expose my friends in the world that this is who I am.
Yeah.
I knew that you'd be clean when I got here, but I wasn't expecting this much. But I mean, you got everything. But I mean, that's just you, and you have a purpose to everything. I want to start on a couple decisions that have recently come down.
Sure.
Because I think DEI is a very important subject right
Yes.
now, and I want to get your ideas on what you think and what I hear sometimes. But so the Supreme Court now has said your future job admissions that we cannot look at people based on their race as a consideration to grant admission
Yes.
So I'm not going to go and say, oh, well, I need this many of this box checked, or
Yes.
this many of this box checked,
Yes.
or this many. So what are your thoughts on that?
The Supreme Court actually handed down a very similar situation, as I recall, back in the mid-90s out of Michigan over, I think it was a young lady seeking for admissions to law school there. So schools that I'm aware of,
Right.
for the most part, adhere to quote-unquote blind admissions. And the way I can demonstrate that, when I was a student at UNC Charlotte, we rose up to about 14%, maybe 17% by the time I left, I think, after I just left, of being the student body, African Americans. When I worked there, I believe we were either 3 or 5%.
So terms that we don't hear until you go to an HBCU
Yes.
is PWI.
Yep.
So I attended a PWI, which
Yes.
is a primarily white institution.
Yes, sir.
And when I was at Appalachian in the 90s, we were at 5% minority, right? All right, and then I went to HBCU, which, of course, I've told you that story before in the bookstore. The young lady gets out of line, gets a T-shirt, and she says, "Oh my God, they have it!" And she picks it up, and she stands behind me and said, "I'll let you go in front of me. What's HBCU mean?" I'm already in the school and don't know what HBCU means, which is a historically black college and university.
Yeah.
Which, what a great lesson as an individual and human being I learned there, because as a young man, we're taught as growing up to be colorblind, and it is the worst thing you can ever be. Is you don't be colorblind. You understand where Robert is when he gets pulled over. You understand where Robert is when he does that. You understand where John is when he's in this situation and stuff like that. And it definitely changed the way that I think and interact with people. But I know that we're going to have to take a break in a second, but I really want to talk about DEI and what your thoughts are on that.
Okay.
So we've got about 3 minutes left. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What do you feel about that?
I think it's important.
Right.
I think it's somewhat a crutch or an overused opportunity in some spaces. And what I mean by that is some people will put an organization or an office in place to say they did it, but then the question becomes, what are the levels of your program? What are the how intense or how purposeful or how immersive are your programs? Because it's a very difficult conversation to have. We went from diversity by itself, which back in the day, to many of us would just mean white and black, because that's what you had in America for the most part. And now we have expanded it to other races, ethnicities. We've expanded it to include people of different sexual orientations or sexual identities. And to be quite frank, that's a lot for some people to swallow. When I say swallow, I shouldn't say swallow. For a lot of people to actually internalize, because some people can have that easily equated politically as though somehow something's being taken from them.
And that's what I was going to ask you. How do you say to someone, because as I'm traveling the state now with what I'm running for,
Yes.
I get all kinds of input on different subjects. Personally, I think inclusion is the key to it all. Making everyone feel that they're welcome is the first step to getting all of this done. But, how do you say to someone that looks at you and goes, if I hear another time that I'm supposed to be more diverse, what do I do? I don't know what to say to that, because it's like, I just want everyone to feel welcome.
Yes.
So that, and then we'll take a quick break.
I think one of the biggest challenges there is if you're comfortable in the space that you're in and you haven't been given some type of rote response or even some type of lie as it relates to these types of things, it's easier for you. I would just say, I equate in some cases the over exuberance when you talk about the Black Power struggle, let's say, to being very much like the person who is so overly caught up in patriotism and the flag. Not a whole lot of difference, because you're so polarized.
Or even MAGA.
Yeah, MAGA.
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
You're so polarized. You're not just taking time to hear. And if you are getting most of your information from the internet
Right.
or from people that you heard certain things from, can be very dangerous.
Your opinion is truly those that surround you, and that's why you are such a reader, voracious reader.
I try.
Ready to take a break?
Yes.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back, everybody. Robert Muhammad here, and now we're going to go into the area that's most interesting to Stabler, okay? So this is your exact position at Howard University, which we call Howard the Mothership, right?
The Mecca.
The Mecca, all right.
Mecca,
So,
yes.
and the Mothership too. I mean, it's the big one, right?
It is.
So, what is your exact title? Executive Director or
Executive Director of Financial Aid.
of Financial Aid? So you report to who?
I report to the AVP, Executive Vice President, Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management.
And that person reports to the president.
That person reports to our Chief Operating Officer.
So you're four-way.
Yes. Now, yeah. Yes. Right.
Three
now,
in one hand, but four in another.
Yes,
Right. Yeah, okay.
yes.
So, and I got to ask this since we're talking about this. How is a PWI and a HBCU different in management styles and stuff like? Is that a good one?
It is.
You're liking this.
Sure.
So what's the hierarchy, et cetera, and stuff like that? Because at Winston-Salem State and let's say PWI Appalachian or UNC Charlotte, they both have the board, which is, and then are we 17, 16 member institutions?
I think 17.
All right. And so then where does that fall in, like for an HBCU? I mean, does the president report to the board and then?
Sure. So fundamentally, it's all the same.
Okay.
We're private. Winston-Salem State was public.
Right.
So fundamentally, it's all the same. If there's any major difference, I go back to the 1980s, late 70s, early 80s,
Right.
when we began to have a drain of intelligentsia. And nothing against HBCUs or cash-strapped PWIs or inner-city community colleges, but PWIs began to seek us out.
Right.
Cornell West going, I believe, to Princeton or to Yale,
Right.
or maybe both. So you had people that were taken from the HBCUs, and then you had this mindset among many people that we had arrived because we had legislation that said, you now are no longer 3/5 of a human being.
Right.
You now are fully vested as a human being.
Right.
But of course, that wasn't true. So I think over the course of time, resources have played a part. Resources are so important because for a small cash-strapped school or an HBCU, and I always put all this together, you may be so driven by numbers to get students that sometimes you don't necessarily know what it takes from a wraparound service to have the student persist from semester to semester, to be retained, and to graduate in a timely manner. And as a result, you then sometimes lose some of the touchy-feelingness. One thing about HBCUs historically that was always in place is that the folks there always felt, and even today feel, that they're there to help students move to a different space. PWIs have adopted this to some extent, and they probably do in some areas better than some PWIs who don't have the resources. So you go to one of these DEI offices, and let's say an Appalachian State or at a UNC Charlotte, they are really looking at the wraparound services. One thing that I discovered at Winston-Salem State that I'm trying desperately to address at Howard, and to some extent nationally, is realizing that some of the students that go to HBCUs and even other schools, they code switch. They have to be something else in Chicago versus on campus. They have a gang affiliation, not because they wanted one, but because they had to have it to survive.
Right, yeah.
And then some of these students have to go back and code switch. They may not come back to your school for something as simple as maybe getting caught up in some sort of petty criminal activity.
Right.
or maybe something worse, where there may be a life lost. So we as schools, whether PWI or HBCUs, we have to understand that on your campuses there are at least some vestiges of some semblance of gang activity.
Right.
You have to understand these kids or these young people are code switching. You also have to understand that some have nowhere to go for their breaks. If they go home, they're going to be mentally or physically abused, perhaps. Mom and dad or someone is going to try to take their refund.
Right.
They have nowhere to go for Thanksgiving or the winter or Christmas break. So if we're going to be successful, we have to begin to look at wraparound services and go back to the old school idea of an HBCU, in my opinion, where the president or the chancellor or the financial aid director, someone, they would take you home for dinner for Thanksgiving. They would give you a place to stay. They would make sure if there was no place to stay on campus.
It's family.
Yeah. Now, one thing that hurt me, we had a young man at Winston-Salem State. We worked collectively. It was me, the guy who was a chef on campus. There was a doctor. We had housing, financial aid. We had student accounts. All we wanted to do is have this young man be able to stay on campus for the summer, find him a job,
Right.
a place to stay,
Right.
so he'd be safe. And by the time we worked all this out, the young man was on his way back to Chicago, and we never heard from him again.
Right.
So I think the primary difference right now is maybe some of us have lost some of that, but I also think it's a demonstration of higher ed. Some of us think we work from 8 o'clock to 4:59. We make widgets.
Yeah.
And you don't. You don't stop caring for a student at 4:59. If you got to be on the phone with that student to 6:30, if you have to make some decisions, as we've done at Howard, as we learned that we have students coming to us internationally, so now we have individuals who are available to talk to those students based on their time zone.
Right.
So you have to meet the students where they are, give them the tools that they want, and from my work as a financial aid director, executive director of financial aid, a financial aid administrator, have an awardable free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, meaning that when they get that FAFSA, and it's awardable, meaning they can get financial aid,
Right.
they can go to any school, they can apply to any school and perhaps get financial aid, a federal opportunity at any school in the nation.
Right.
That golden ticket, like Charlie Bucket from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, says there's opportunity there. And that's what we have to do.
And all right, so
That was a lot, by the way.
No, you're fine. This is I'm learning, and you know, you and I've had some discussions about this off camera before this. We even got together today.
Mm-hmm.
So my question then would be this: is Stabler is starting his senior year
Yes.
and wants to go to different schools. Obviously, the first thing is the admission process and finding the school. How do you recommend that a student look at a school, et cetera, things like that?
Yes.
And then what's the process of getting financial aid? Because I know the longs, you know where I'm going with this. I know the lines must be long that first week at Howard to get their financial aid, and that is your T-ball with a basketball on it and a freaking because I know.
Yes.
How long are those lines at Howard that first week? Not at all.
No.
You got lines now?
But here's the thing. Coming out of COVID and changing some of the basic approach that I did at Winston-Salem State,
Right.
the lines are not as long. I'll be going up, knock on wood, for about 4 weeks, mid-August to mid-September, to see for myself and what needs to be done to tweak it.
Robert was famous at Winston-Salem State. He'd take a picture of when school started. There were no lines. Wow, good save there. There were no lines, and the reason why there were no lines is because you did exactly what we were talking about a few minutes ago. You were addressing things way before things started.
We worked early.
Yeah.
We worked smart.
Right. So how do I get into school? What's some things
Right
that I
now?
need to work on?
Sure. So
Listen, Stabler.
So whatever school you would like to go to, we always say you have your tier. You have the one or two that you really want to get into.
Right.
You have those that you have a chance to get into. Both of those you probably do, but one you probably have a better chance than the other.
Right.
And then you have another tier of, I know I can get in this school regardless. And then you may have a final tier of something that has a draw maybe due to it being close to the coast or whatever the case might be.
And mine would be down here of the school that might accept me.
Yes.
And that's the only one. So for me. But so yeah,
But,
no.
yeah, but as you look at that, you then find out what the schools offer educationally. You look at how long it may take somebody to graduate. You look at the graduation rate. You look at all the different things that U.S. News and World reports out on.
Right.
You look at the type of gift-based aid they may offer students, scholarships or what have you, and then you begin to make some decisions. And in your senior year, even before that, you begin to build, in my opinion, a journal.
Right.
And that journal is something that tells your story. So if you do volunteer work, if you work part-time at a store, whatever the case might be, or at a community service project, you have people that you can connect back to who will be willing to write letters on your behalf to help get you into school. Because if you think about it, you really have no, well, won't say you have none. You have very little social capital built at that time. So they help you with the social capital.
So how are we looking on? He's worked at the same job for 4 years. All right, with us. He's done some volunteer stuff through different associations around shooting videos for them through us.
Yes.
So that's good stuff.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and
That's
we got
good
him some good. We got some good. And the other thing that we talked about earlier is, someone like you. I mean, you know Stabler. Who do you know at different schools that might be a phone call and things like that? It is truly who you know in a lot of this stuff, right?
It is. It is. It's becoming more difficult now because the funding isn't there like it was some years ago. Some people are still recovering, I believe, from the crash in 07 to 09, 10. And it's all about your endowment. What can your endowment do? Some people think if you were to give me $1 million right now for Howard University or Winston-Salem State University, wow, I have $1 million. I can send all these students to school. If it's an endowed scholarship, I may receive 3 to 5% every year off that $1 million to be able to use for scholarships.
Right.
So as a result, the $1 million or $2 million is
only
not as great.
$30,000 a year.
It's not as great as we think it is.
And in some cases, that's like 2 students.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about the big one, the other Supreme Court decision, and that's financial aid. I figured you were going to have a different take on this. It's still the same take that I thought that you would have, because I hear people going, "Well, I paid for my school," and it's oh my God, if I hear that again. But it's predatory. And what I mean, so my wife went through a process of, they came and said, "Well, you want to adjust your interest rate?" Well, then they messed her up.
Yes.
But so tell us about financial aid and also the recent decision of the Supreme Court, which now the Biden administration is trying to do something different.
Yes.
So talk to us.
So the idea that Biden had merit,
Right.
because the loan indebtedness had ballooned to at one point $1.5 or $6 trillion, more than consumer debt.
Right.
So the idea was good. I think it just became politicized for the totally wrong reasons.
Right.
Because some of these individuals, their loan indebtedness goes back decades. And so as a result, it's very difficult, it's very difficult to determine.
He's still working, so,
I'm turning it off.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
It's very difficult then to have a conversation without politicizing it. So I had someone ask me what did I think a good amount would be, and they were in the medical field, and they had paid their loans,
Right.
and they were not averse to it. They just wanted an answer, and I said maybe $10,000. So we were on the same page. I'm not trying to forgive everyone's loans.
Right.
But once that sort of went the other way, then this new idea, if somebody's made so many payments over the course of so much time and they've done it consecutively, I think that has merit, because some people are actually find themselves in their 60s still trying to pay off loans.
There's got to be a compromise, and I don't know if it's credit for interest or something like that, because the rates were just ridiculous of what they did to people. All right, we're going to take a quick break, then we're going to come back, finish up. Any closing thoughts? I'm noticing something over there that you've been kidding about. So, all right, we'll be right back with more Camel Seat Chat. Welcome back to Camel Sea Chat. I am here finishing up with Robert Muhammad, a great guy. We haven't even talked about Kappa Alpha Psi.
No,
I
not
mean,
yet.
so that was a big aspect of your college career and stuff
Actually,
like that.
post-college.
Post-college?
Post-college.
You did an alumni?
Yeah, I did alumni.
Oh, wow.
I
That's
was,
okay.
I was looking at the Nation of Islam at that time, and I was told erroneously that I could not be both in the Nation of Islam, as a fruit of Islam, member of the men in the Nation of Islam, and be in a fraternity, and I believe that.
Right.
When I left the Nation of Islam, I found out my brother, he and I were not raised together.
Right.
He was a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, and that actually, my joining the organization actually brought us closer together. So I've been now a member a little over 20 years now.
And each fraternity has different things.
Yes.
As I told you, I'm a Delta Chi, and we were founded in 1890 at the same place of 1906, Alpha Phi Alpha. And of course, there's isn't it weird? We prejudge fraternities as well. So you're supposed to be smart to be an Alpha, or bigger to be an Omega.
Yep.
What is the thing for Kappa Alpha Psi? You're supposed to be.
Oh wow! Well, I mean, they call
Go
us
ahead and say
they
it.
call us pretty boys.
Pretty boys. That's right, Claire.
However, my take on that actually is that since we talk about the Kappa diamond, I look at the diamond being under pressure from cold to becoming a diamond,
Right.
and it's multifaceted. So therefore, every aspect of every other fraternity, based on how the light of life strikes it, we have all those different opportunities. Because I think if I
You're
can
still
be a
pretty
pretty
new.
boy,
You're still pretty
I can
new.
always be a smart
No,
boy.
but you're
dude as
smart
well.
too. But you're still pretty new. All right, so let's finish up with we were talking predatory. I definitely want to touch
Yes.
on that, and then you got something over there
Yes.
that I've been eyeing the whole time. So
Yes.
What's up?
Well, the other part of it is we just need to be very cognizant of that occurring. It happened for years in some segments, such as the proprietary area. Those areas were about putting behinds in seats. And some of the private and public schools began to adopt some of that same process. So again, it goes back to the idea of making a widget. You're not concerned about the outcome. You're not concerned necessarily in some cases about the student matriculating and graduating. You're concerned about the immediacy about getting behind in a seat so you can reap the revenue.
We've talked about that many times, and it's a frustration sometimes
It
for
is.
you,
It is.
where it's all we want's the money.
Yes.
And I know that you fight that all the time, which is kind of weird that you're the person that's over financial aid, and you are incentivized in a sense of good performance in your job is the more that comes in,
Yes.
but it's also a very frustrating double-edged sword.
And the other part of it is that there are limits to how much aid a student can receive. So if a student is a Pell Grant recipient they're going to receive Pell up to 6 years for a full-time enrollment.
Right.
So if they go to a school and they quote unquote don't have, well, I won't say quote unquote, if they don't matriculate, if they do 2 years and then they're out for whatever reason, they've lost 4 years worth of opportunity. And then with the new changes to the federal regulations, going from the expected family contribution, which has been in place for some 30 years based on how the calculation has been done, to now a student aid index, it's going to change how aid is actually being offered to students. So a student who is eligible for Pell Grant today, well, in 23-24 this year, in 24-25, with the student aid index, because we no longer can count siblings. So if you had a brother that was going to school the same time as you, right now I count the brother, you get a discount for having that brother calculated in the equation. That's going away. So we're going to have students who schools have to figure out what to do with them if they're going to lose Pell Grant. Are we going to then find additional resources to assist us with our graduation rate, but more importantly, to help those students persist, retain, and graduate?
So should every student apply for financial aid?
Oh, yes.
Okay, always.
Yes.
No matter what your parent, if your parents or doctors, whatever, still apply for financial aid.
Some schools require the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, to assist not just with need-based aid, but with merit-based aid.
And does it hurt you if, like, say that your brother is a genius and they've given him enough money at the school he's going to not have to pay anything and already has money for graduate school, and then your Stabler, let's say, does that hurt you that your brother's on scholarships for being so smart?
Well, see, that
Hey,
won't even count.
come into it, right?
But I tell anyone, there's more money for the in many cases for the undergraduate opportunity, whether it's the Pell Grant, which is a huge program, and other types of grant-based aid or gift-based aid. When you look at going to for your graduate studies, follow the money. Right. It may not be the school of your choice. It may be in North Dakota. It may be cold. It may be goodness knows where. But follow the money, because oftentimes those schools will have funding opportunities and along with loans, which you don't want to have too much loan indebtedness, right, to assist the student with getting through their graduate and their doctoral studies.
Does anybody ever ask you where your MBA is from?
No, very rarely.
Right. Yeah,
yes.
the MBA.
Yeah.
And I have friends that have gone to other schools and paid much more money. We paid about $24,000, and that included a trip to China.
Yeah,
for 10
exactly.
days.
Exactly.
All right, so I have the question that I have for you is the last one is, you believe in being involved in your industry.
Yes.
And we've had many talks about this. Yes. What is your current position in your industry?
So I'm currently the DC president, the District of Columbia president for our financial aid organization, which we call Tri-State.
And you were North Carolina's president
I was
at one
North
point?
Carolina president from 19 to 20.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and it was fun.
It's fun to be involved, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so what's this thing?
All
right,
sure.
Stabler. All right. Oh my God, my wife is going to kill me on this.
So, this is a replica. Now, the only thing different is it's not covered in velvet, but the color's correct.
Okay.
This is a replica of the thank you, of the National Wrestling Alliance's heavyweight championship that was from 1974-75, held by Jack Briscoe, who was one of the best wrestlers on the planet. The reason they changed is because the velvet became very sweaty and nasty, so they went to something more traditional. Right. But this is a replica of a belt held by Jack Briscoe. So I wanted you to have it.
All right. Yeah. Now, I'm supposed to. I got it.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't understand, buddy. I'm the man. This is so awesome. Thank you so much. My wife is going to kill you. This is going up in the cave. I cannot wait for this. This is so awesome. I couldn't believe when you told me you wanted to give me a belt. Man, it is so great to see you all the time.
Always a pleasure, man.
Any parting thoughts? Anything you want to share? Want to give an inner peace? What about an inner peace quote? How's that to tell everybody?
Oh my goodness, inner peace quote.
Yeah.
Let me say another quote, and this is one of my favorite. If I get it wrong, please forgive me. But it goes something like this: "He who provides you with the radius and the diameter or circumference of your thoughts determines for you your entire sphere of thinking." So in math, once you have the radius, you can only go so large as far as your circle. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at spheres of knowledge, such as sociology, psychology, what have you, all of us have spheres of knowledge. Yours is in real estate and other things. I have my own spheres of knowledge. But if someone has predetermined your radius and given you the diameter, then your circumference is always going to be limited. So always determine your own circle and your own breadth and your own area and your own spheres of understanding and knowledge.
That's awesome, man. I almost hate to do what I'm about to do. This is right here. Thank you for being on Camel City Chat.
Yes.
We'll be back next week with more Camel City Chat.